Early on in my life, I had some relationships that were really challenging for me. There was a lot of blame and criticism and no accountability that could be accepted on the other end, and it really took its toll on me. So much so that like when I got older and finally found my own voice, I vowed to never let that kind of shit happen to me again in my life. But what wound up happening was I became so petrified and like on high alert that it could happen again, that when I started having my own relationships, I would pounce on the littlest thing that felt like it was a reflection of my past trauma. And I'd be like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not taking this shit. I felt like I was being strong in that way, but it was keeping me safe and protected, but not opening me up to see what kind of relationships actually could exist. But when I say that I understand at a baseline the temptation for some cancel culture and the trauma of where that comes from, like I get it. But what I also understand is how much that just feeds our own fear and keeps us from connecting in ways that we need. Cancel culture is when like a person or an entity does or says something that we just viscerally disagree with. And we don't just write them off, but we kind of rally the troops to boycott and shut them down. So some examples are like Chick-fil-A, eHarmony, Kevin Hart, and these are just a few examples of when things are said or done in a way that kind of goes against the grain of our need for equality. And like for so long, we haven't even had the basic right to just exist. So the fact that we're in this place now where there's been a lot of really cool major changes that have happened for us in the interest of equality, it makes sense that we would collectively get triggered with the littlest bit of sense of past trauma that have been so oppressive to us, and that we'd want to go on the attack and make sure that we can fight for our rights. And so this makes sense, and we do need to keep seeing change happening. Like, you know, when Chick-fil-A is donating to organizations that go against equality, you know, does that need to stop? Yes. Does eHarmony need to make sure that they're including same-sex options in their dating site? Yes. Does Kevin Hart need to apologize and own for any homophobic jokes that he's made in the past? Yes. Do we need to stop giving our money to these places or to these people if they're not willing to make some of these changes in the name of equality? Fuck yes. But do we need to make sure that we're actually having some conversation first to see if there's an opportunity for change? Yes, because we want to respond, not react. We don't want to just keep putting out fires. We want to make sure that we're teaching people how to not even start them. Why does this matter? There's like two reasons mostly. The first one is because it's actually kind of not an effective strategy for us to make some of the social changes that we want to in a long-term and a meaningful way. We're not actually changing attitudes. We're just kind of, you know, pressuring people to not express them as publicly. And so what winds up happening, people express them privately through voting. How do you think we got a Donald Trump? So we can't be bulldogs and defensive in this way. Of course, we need to make sure that we're still being really assertive in our need for equality, but we also want to have some openness so that we can still win over the people who are able to learn and who do want to kind of make some changes with us. So the second thing, and this is actually the part of the conversation that I think is the more meaningful one to have more than just like what's the effective strategy for social change, is what is this actually doing to us? What's the impact here? You know, how is it actually impacting us when we're constantly attacking and barking as the only tool to feel safe and protected? That how is that going to influence our own lives? Why do you think it is that we can be so impatient and unforgiving just of our own selves, be so self-critical? Why do you think we're constantly attacking each other? Why do you think it's so hard for us to let other queer people make mistakes and learn from them and forgive them? Why do you think collectively, as a whole, we're so lonely and desperate for connection and struggle to know how to even make those relationships happen in our lives? We're not responsible for the trauma that we experienced in our lives. Like, we didn't marginalize ourselves, but we are responsible for how we choose to respond to anything like that now, you know? And so I know it's like not as sexy of a thing to call it, but maybe we can have like a call out and see if a conversation can happen and then make some decisions culture over a cancel culture. Canceling is too easy and it's just defensive. And when we can find just like a little bit more patience and understanding and openness in a general sense, then we get to practice more of that for our own selves and for the relationships that we have in our lives first. And that is absolutely a more meaningful way to liberate ourselves, more than canceling a chicken sandwich ever could.